Hello, dear friends. Thanks for being with us. As always with us, Dr. Michael Leitman. Hello, everyone. Mikhail Sanilevich. I'm Semyon Nikul, Boris Belotsalkovsky. And our subject today is Kabbalah, psychology, Kabbalistic psychology, the secret of successful relationships. Let's put it that way. There are many groups, many students with us. Please ask your questions. We'll air them live. So we call it the secret of successful relationship according to Kabbalistic psychology. I don't know, you're inventing such names and I have to explain what it means. I don't know. Well, Pavel from Uzhgorod is asking, how can I understand what do we have to do in this world to be adapted or in correspondence with the spiritual world, in sync with it? In general, bestowal, meaning we have to be like the light. But an act of bestowal isn't the action itself per se, but the intention. The actions, they could sometimes be the very opposite. I can receive from someone else. The main thing is that my intention is that I'm receiving from him in order for it to be to his benefit. Suppose someone wants to give me a present. So I have to say, thank you, receive it by this. I give a pleasant feeling, meaning the actions and the intentions don't necessarily have to coincide, but the intention has to be the same. This is what, if you call it this way, Kabbalistic psychology is about. We have to act in all our relations such that we will bring all those around us, will allow them to benefit. This is the secret. This is the secret of relationships, and this is something that you have to do toward everyone, even your worst enemies. But, what does it mean to do good deeds? It's very possible that for this, you have to really shake them up, ride them one way or another. You have to get tough and rough with them. But if your intention is correct, the upper light will work in it, and this way, you'll come to the correct results. Meaning it's like a mother that sometimes has to punish her child for him to learn. Now, question from Kiev. You're talking about the crisis. You're saying that everything's changing, but there were always wars. Why is there progress everywhere besides in human relationships? There is technical progress. There is, in everything besides human relations, because we're becoming ever more egoistic, on the one hand. On the other hand, we understand that we can't live as we did. So it's a problem. The world's becoming global. On the one hand, we're interdependent, and this determines new forms of relationships. We can't run away from it. We use the same culture. We're interdependent and interconnected. Look what's going on in the world. You heard the latest news. These are buying from those sell to these. The entire world is like one big market. No one can be free of anyone. And therefore, against our will, we have to keep some good relations between us. This is something that we can't escape. To the contrary, God help us that we'll reach a state where we will completely be interdependent, and maybe that will force our world, oblige it to do something. Look what's going on with North and South Korea. South Korea convinced them that North Korea became convinced that they won't be able to do anything or force anyone to do anything with their nuclear bombs, that they'll just become poorer and poorer and their life will become worse and worse, and eventually the people there will simply bring down the government. One way or another, it has to end with a revolution at some point in time, and this is what it brings things to. Because, against their own will, North Korea agrees to unite with South Korea, at least to some extent, but in order to feed themselves. So, man's freedom, man's rights, we had many revolutions, things became better, uncomparable. It became better not because things got better, not because people became better, but it's because it's worthwhile. Look, if a worker is free, he has a family, he can go on vacation, he can consume, everything becomes more developed and so on, then he works better, he becomes more qualified, he brings more earnings. We have to understand that all these human rights and so on, they're good for the proprietors. Maybe it's presented a bit differently, but this is how it is. But internally wise, the same relations we had 10,000 years ago, the ego is developing all the time and becoming ever harsher, stricter, rigid. But we cover it with laws, rules, this, that, but still. And if for a few dozens of years there's like a transition, like it happened in America in the past 50 years, if there is a surge, like in the past 50 years in the United States, then now we see a completely different attitude among people. And also in Russia, you had the 90s, and now again, meaning these are all periods. But life became easier and safer than it was a few hundred years ago. But you can't compare life this way. You can't talk about how things were 1,000 years ago and compare it with what we have today, obviously. But in accordance with our developed ego, regarding it, we didn't get any better. When you're talking about the ego, what do you mean? Meaning, we use each other to our own benefit. Yeah, the way people were, they still are. Became worse. People became much worse. People don't understand how much more dependent, interdependent today they are, how subordinated to others they are, carrying out the will of their bosses, proprietors, the owner of Facebook, Google, and so on. They don't understand how subordinated they are. When I look at people, at the youngsters that are addicted to their mobiles, these are robots. Like you sometimes see movies, these are robots that are all the time, they were given this work and they can't refuse. So a person, is he a slave or is he free? Andrei from Lvov is asking, we're talking about the secret of good relationships. What advice can a Kabbalist give in order to shape, build, create a good relationship between parents and children? The advice I'd give is, it's not simple. It depends on the environment in which the child lives in. This is the only thing that everything depends on. I can't direct him in a way that he and the environment won't coincide. You have to create an atmosphere where The family supports him as much as possible, gives him as much confidence as possible, giving the feeling that we're always on his side, in his favor. Yes, this is what he has to know, that he has what to rely on, and then he'll grow up strong and courageous. This is the interesting thing. Exactly when he feels a good family that's supporting him and love and everything, he grows up to be courageous. Because, it's like a greenhouse. No. It's a paradox that you can especially see in Israel, where we raise our children gently, and then in the army they're not afraid of anything during times of war. And the Arabs that raise their children in a very rigid way, tough way, they run away. It's a paradox. It's psychology. This is something that you have to study. But this is how it's expressed. So give your children maximum love and support, and you will see that as a result they'll be strong and independent. Pavel from Bulgaria is asking, can Kabbalah help countries, governments on that level, on the national level, relations between countries? Of course, Kabbalah can do it, but for this you have to create certain circumstances. It's impossible to simply flow into the system and work in it. You can't dictate. It's not only to dictate, it's a completely different form of governance. It's like attaching electrical wires to some mechanical device. Impossible. So, it's gradual work. But were the government to want, a regime want to do it, then, first and foremost, they'd start changing themselves and the public by way of correct education and upbringing. Main thing is the upbringing. Gradually changing people, and then society will become different, and the relations would change, and the way people are governed, everything would change. But it only depends on education. There has to be a very clear educational program for the population. Oleg is asking, is it necessary to have a revolution to reach the next degree of human relationships, or is it possible to do it without a revolution? Well, it depends on the measure to which there is antagonism in society, where it reaches a measure where you can't deal with it in any other way but through revolution. Kabbalah says that actually there's place for both, and also in Kabbalah there are descents, ascents, shatterings, where it's impossible to achieve mixture, but only by way of explosion. Suppose blowing one metal into another, meaning changing forms and so on. So these forceful methods, there's a place for them when our ego doesn't respond to anything else, doesn't surrender to anything else. So we have to use these means. But again, we're going back to education. Were we able to systematically, during every workday, at every workplace, necessarily, were we able to give an hour and a half of a talk, practical talk, by the way, also something to practically realize, for the entire population, then undoubtedly we wouldn't have had to change the population in any way. Galina from Vilnius is asking, does Kabbalah satisfy women because it's actually a study for men? By no means is Kabbalah a teaching for men. Yeah, but we see men on the morning lesson. To the contrary, men are much more egoistic than women are, and therefore It's much more important for them to study Kabbalah systematically, very precisely. Men are much more egoistic. Women, even in our world, they're altruistic. A woman gives birth, she raises children, she takes care of the family. She works, she helps. These are all egoistic things. But, nonetheless, men are incapable of doing something like that. So don't say that Kabbalah isn't for women. To the contrary, Kabbalah is especially realized, so to speak, in female qualities, but in a completely different way, completely different style than with men. But Kabbalah is for women. I'm now starting to give every second Thursday. I'm giving a lesson for women, and there are women from all over Israel that come to our center, and I'm very happy about it. I dedicate this talk. It's very important for me. We see that you're really flying on these lessons. Yeah, I get some serious strength from it, and we have a very good connection and understanding. You talked about a mother, you talked about other things, but she asked about herself, a single woman. Single how? The entire world's before her. She can disseminate, she can do anything. Women are much stronger in dissemination than men are. Men, they have to work on their connection. Women, they have to work on disseminating outwards. And this is how every Kabbalistic group is formed and shaped everywhere, where men and women, men, they come together, they create a 10, and women, they disseminate. That's when they work together. I heard a lot about education from you. Is it possible to educate the ego? He's absolutely right. When we say Kabbalistic education, it means to be educated by the upper light. When I, with the help of the different actions that the Kabbalists write about, we draw that I and my friends, we draw upon ourselves the upper light that brings us the connection. And in that connection, the upper light is revealed, the Creator. With us, we create one whole, and this is the state that we have to come to. Meaning, Kabbalistic education, it offers to unite us under the influence of the upper light, to make it so that our connection will be such that the upper light will be revealed among us, but according to the qualities of equivalence of form. And then, in this unity between us and the light, the source of the upper light will become revealed in it, called the Creator. This is all called Kabbalistic education. Albert from Hamburg is asking, if the public only want fun and cakes, or what can you do? Or Kabbalists, they do propaganda, they what? No. By no means. No propaganda, no nothing. We just have to show people that when we connect, we draw upon us the best possible force of nature from which we can get tremendous pleasure. And so this is what we'd like to see. There's nothing more satisfying, fulfilling, pleasuring. Meaning this example for others will give others the desire to be engaged in this. According to the percentage of depression and so on that we see in the world, the usage of alcohol, drugs, antidepressants, and so on, we can say that a few billions of people in the world would happily be ready, with the help of studying Kabbalah, would be more than happy to fulfill themselves because they feel empty and they feel pain. Can you describe the kind of relations that are supposed to exist between people? The relations have to be such that the upper light will be able to fill us. That's it. So that the upper light will be able to fill us. Then it would answer all of our questions. We'd find out where we're from, where do we exist, in what worlds, what's going on before us, everything that's beyond time and space. We'd understand and see everything. Would become 1,000,000 times greater, more extended. We wouldn't have been afraid of death, because our problem today is that we know that soon everything's going to end. And therefore, somehow in advance, we prepare ourselves for the way, so to speak. You can see it on people. When they approach old age, you see, there's no place to rush to. What can you do? Last 20 years, he's already putting the brakes on. It's incorrect. When there is the ability to fulfill yourself by the upper light appears, you feel that nothing ends, that everything continues, that time doesn't exist, and then you have a completely different attitude toward this world. Question: if men and women have a different attitude toward life, is it possible to sustain a harmonious family? And how can we avoid divorce, or is divorce a solution? Well, of course, there is a big difference if someone studies, and if a couple, one of them studies and the other doesn't study and feels that it's against him. I think that it's always possible to find a compromise. Of course, when the husband studies Kabbalah, it's easier. But if the wife studies Kabbalah and the husband doesn't, then she dedicates herself to it and so on. It's more complicated. But still, I think that you always have to find compromises. And divorce is not the solution. Especially if you have children. If you have mutual children, I'm against divorce. Divorce with children, it's just you destroy the lives of others. This is very egoistic. Even if you think that the children will be better off, incorrect. Even the worst possible family is better than a divorced one. Why? Why is it so? Where do you take this from? These rules, these laws, is this spiritual? We're talking about the environment. If the family is a mini environment, because as long as you're a family, regardless what kind of family you are, you have the ability to correct, to come closer together, even partially. When you're separated, for the children, it's a shattered life, broken life. To remain only with a mother without a father, for them, it's a feeling that you can't fulfill by anything else. So it's not only for families, but it's in all relations between people. So you're talking about compromise in general. You're for compromise. I'm for compromise, like you're saying, because it gives the ability for correction. But when you separate, when you leave, when so on and so on, you can't come closer, you can't do anything. Again, this is if there are children. If there are no children, then there's nothing to talk about. A family, we mean when there are children. What is the conflict between men and women, and how to receive pleasure from a conflict? The conflict between men and women is because they can't yield toward one another. As the Rabash said, my teacher, what he said, that a family is completely built, established on concessions. Only concessions. So every time when you're in touch with others, how can I concede some more, instead of, trying to push, pressure, and so on. To the contrary, be strong in terms of making concessions. And immediately you'll see how your life will become easier. And in this, you'll give others an example. How to enjoy conflicts? By rising above it. By this, you correct yourselves. Many times, Owen from Bologna is asking, many times we are prisoners of our relatives. We want to do good things, but it turns out to the worst. In us, there is a program that is directed at self-destruction because we live in our ego, and the ego eventually has to come to self-destruction, self-annihilation, and on its broken parts and pieces has to rise a quality that's opposite to it, which is altruism. Therefore, we have to see it this way. The ego is trapped. Yeah. It's created only in order to disappear, to vanish. Anna is asking how to listen to myself and others, because this could improve our relations. How can I listen, really hear myself and others? This depends on the inner connection between us. She is right. For this you need inner contact, a contact of hearts. When you wish to fulfill one another, then you'll be able to hear each other. Otherwise, people can't hear each other. They don't even see each other. They create in themselves some kind of reality and relate to this reality as to a person that as if exists outside of them, but actually exists inside of them. We don't see anything outside of ourselves, only what exists inside of us. I see the quality of women as something that's warm, soothing. The essence of women is egoism. Egoism just like it is with men, only in a different form. No point in idolizing women, idealizing women. You have to understand that you're just the same egoist as everyone else is, all the more that you don't understand it yet. What you have to do is to work under the influence of the upper light, of course, without any pressure, without anything, without frightening or something. It's a clear program of correcting the ego that we have to correctly absorb in ourselves, but by no means to think that a woman is more corrected or something, that she needs no correction, that to the contrary, we have to tell everyone about the female nature and so on. No, by no means. What kind of self-love is this? What do we have to correct? The relations between people or the relations between man and the Creator? The relations between people. By correcting the relations between people, you correct your relations with the Creator. I'll correct them. How can you correct something? Where? What? How? People feel some inner force, some inner force, something. Look what you're saying. Some inner force, something I'll do with it. There's nothing concrete. These are all fantasies. So who does man talk to when he's talking with himself, this inner voice? Yeah, that inner voice is you yourself, and be careful with it. Yulia is asking, what do I have to tell myself if I'm in conflict with my partner? Or do I have to reach the depth of conflict in order to feel what I have to do? Hard to say. I don't know who this partner is and what should you do. I really don't know. Do you have to bring the conflict to, I don't know, I can't recommend. Can you imagine what kind of relations, I don't know, I can't simply recommend. The only thing that I can say is, try. Are you studying Kabbalah together? Is he studying Kabbalah with you? But actually, it's a complicated problem. Try to talk more a bit. Just to talk a bit more? Just to talk with each other. Do something that will aim you at something mutual. Do something together. Both. Regarding what you recommended about education, if you bring up children softly, with love, want to turn them into big egoists? No. You teach them. You give them everything that they need, but along with it, you support them. They obviously understand that they have support, both. So love and softness doesn't mean that you don't give them any boundaries. Of course. Leonid is asking, education through the upper light. Is it possible to implement it on people that have no desire for it? No. But when you'll start adapting it somehow in your group, then they will receive from your effort the influence of the surrounding light, and this influence will work on them. They will also somehow want to change, not they themselves, but what's the difference between the education that we're familiar with and, being educated by the light? What's the root difference? The thing is that all methods of education, also the ancient ones, and really there are many of them, secular, religious, different kinds, in different parts of the world, in different cultures, societies. But there is one Kabbalistic method. It's unique. Why? Because it draws the upper light. Meaning there are barely any teachers here. There's only the opportunity to follow those rules. described in the Kabbalistic books. There are not many of them, but if you'll try to follow them, suppose 10 or 15 such rules, maybe even less. The thing is that when you realize them, you draw upon yourself clear influence of the upper light, and it begins to change you. And you start feeling that everything changes. And maybe, by the way, it's not changing for the better. Because for you, as an egoist, as someone who exists in a certain relationship with society, with others, with your family, suddenly, it becomes clear that, hey, what's going on here? There are different scrutinies that start and so on. What do you do? This is where the problem begins. The problem between people. They start understanding that they're already starting to get education. They're being influenced by the upper light. It gets the antagonism out of them, and alongside with it, they have to constantly rise, transcend. This oppositeness that is revealed by the upper light, it has to build the ties, the relations. This is called love covers for all crimes. And this is how they build a second floor of relations. And the second floor of relations, when they build it, they start disclosing and the potential gap difference between the egoistic lower degree and the upper egoistic degree, altruistic degree, they start revealing the potential gap, and in that place, as a result, they'll start feeling the upper light. Is it possible to say that a person that receives a certain measure of the upper light starts feeling antagonistic toward other people? True. Very clear antagonism. That a person doesn't hide, doesn't cancel, but he builds above it, above this ego, the correct attitude. For example, I don't like Boris. I don't like him. I can't talk to him. I can't look at him. Something else. I can't. I have a certain attitude toward him. What should I do? Despite all this, I have to build a bridge. Build a bridge above my rejection, to build a bridge without canceling this antagonism. And at the end, to the measure of difference that appears between me and what I build, there is a gap in which the Creator is revealed. I build a bridge, or does the light do it? It doesn't matter. You build it by your own efforts. This is the rule. We also see it in the book of Zohar. When the students of Rabbi Shimon who wrote the book of Zohar, when they gathered before the lesson, they were so against each other that they were willing to kill each other. And if I don't feel this kind of antagonism, I haven't received the light yet, it means that you still haven't started working on yourself. Simeon, interesting. Evil is a deficiency of the... what is it? Is it a special substance? Is it what? Yeah, it's something that's opposite to the force of good, and also that you don't have to cover, you have to simply work with it correctly. You have to build above it. You have to build the good above it. And then the difference between the good and bad will give you such a difference in potential that will allow the revelation of the Creator. Maybe you will scrutinize 10, 15 principles that you're talking about. Please prepare it for next time. Yeah, maybe we'll make a list and go over them. Okay, I agree. So, the question is, when this antagonism is being revealed, may we lose control, may the conflict explode, erupt? No. When we start studying the wisdom of Kabbalah and we follow the rules, and we build the correct relations in a group, we are already under the guidance, under the supervision of the upper force, upper light, and then really there can't be any problems here. Sena. In order to draw the good force in nature, they first of all have to believe that such a force exists. No, you don't have to believe in anything. Just start doing it and you'll see that it works. What do you mean by believe? Someone will tell me something and I'll believe that at least this force exists. Does the person have to believe in it? Dr. Leitman, I don't understand what you mean by to believe something that someone told me. When a person suffers, he feels bad, and someone talks to you rationally, then usually it's enough in order to begin to somehow realize this method. Mikhail. What stands in the way of a man conceding to a woman and a woman conceding to a man? The thing standing in the way, I don't know. Regarding men and women, it's a different problem. Kabbalah doesn't really deal with these problems. The wisdom of Kabbalah says, let's first of all rise above our ego. And then we'll arrange between us different forms of relations. It'll be both between parents and children, between men and women, between nations, between everyone. First of all, we have to learn how to rise above our ego. Michael, meaning first of all, we have to correct the relations between men and women. Rob, yeah, maybe so. Michael, and then only in the family and so on. Boys, if someone doesn't want to concede and someone else does it all the time, is it correct to do or not? Dr. Leitman, I don't know. I wouldn't say. Look, such short... this gives no solution. Really. I think that now in Russia there's this psychologist, Israeli psychologist. I think that he's on television now. I don't remember his name. Oh, doesn't matter. You can even watch it on the internet. You can find him on the internet. Simeon, how does the wisdom of Kabbalah relate to adapting children? If it's done for the benefit of the child, then positively. Not that a person thinks that I want to have children and then he bears children. He has to understand that he wants to dedicate himself to this child and then he'll be able to bring him closer. You once said that such people, parents feel stronger love toward them than toward their biological children. Right, because a person has to all the time prove to himself his correct attitude. And that's why usually they love them more. Is there such a thing as unconditional friendship? And if so, Dr. Leitman, and there's no such thing as unconditional without any interests, because everything's founded on the ego. This is the essence of our nature. So you don't have to, float around in the clouds. The entire nature is built on an egoistic desire. The thing is that with the help of the upper light, with the help of the influence of the Creator, we can rise above our own nature and start using it differently to the benefit of others. But this is only to the measure of the influence of the upper light on us. We as if rise above the earth, its gravity, but this with the help of the upper force, because we have no such nature. The next day after the fight, to act out as if nothing happened, doesn't this actually increase anger and hate? No, friends. In advance, we have to agree. I'm talking about a husband and wife in their day-to-day ordinary life. You, for example, you had a fight today. The next morning, you get up and you declare, you act out toward the other a new, completely new attitude, as if nothing happened, really. In this respect, my wife, she's simply a perfect teacher. I look at her every morning, I'm really angry at her, I won't take a walk with her, and every morning we take half an hour walk. It's a custom. After the lesson, we meet and we go on a walk together. Usually from 6 till 6:30 a.m. And every time that I come, regardless of what happened yesterday, maybe we were even, we had some kind of conflict because both of us are kind of hot-minded, hot-headed. She meets me, what's up, how's everything, let's take a walk. As if nothing happened yesterday. She has an excellent memory. She remembers everything. But what happened yesterday, today, simply doesn't exist in her memory. And this is very good. I'm very grateful that I have such a wife. Otherwise, I don't know how many times a year we take a walk together. So we really have to learn how to do it. This form of relations between people, there are many forms of relations, but suppose revenge. What do you think about that, Rav? No place for any kind of revenge. Revenge, it's such a frightening kind of ego. To the contrary, you have to show people that, simply teach them that you by no means
То есть, в принципе, если мы берем уже каббалиста, нет таких каких-то вещей.
So Kabbalists, what? They don't have things like that a Kabbalist can go and avenge something. No, what does vengeance give you? It just satisfies your ego, Simeon, and also gives you ulcer. And only. It just satisfies the ego. Satisfaction for the ego. And we have to think about correction. And when you present this kind of antagonistic attitude toward others, you're moving away from the solution. So this is the highest expression of the ego? You bet. It's very negative, even though that you get tremendous pleasure. But this is the biggest egoistic pleasure, revenge. Why? People, when they feel depression, it's easier for them to commit suicide than changing their attitude that to begin with brought them to this kind of depression. The thing is that it's not hard to commit suicide because man actually doesn't end his life, he just ends his suffering. But we have to think, how will we rise above the suffering and everything? And again, I'm saying, the wisdom of Kabbalah offers you in this life while you're still living in this protein body, to come out to the next degree called the soul, meaning the quality of bestowal. It offers you to do it. And anyone listening, regardless of how old he is, it means that he has such an opportunity. So let's help each other realize this opportunity as quickly as possible. We can do it. For us, there's a big congress, the Congress in the United States, which is a world congress. I'm flying Thursday. Sorry, I'm flying there Wednesday for 4 days. And I'll broadcast from there to everyone. So turn on your computer. Get together in groups. And like all the groups that gather, try and participate. Sure, you'll get translation to your language. And participate. Because it's a very large amount of people that come together. And in that you'll feel a tremendous force that's together with you in this motion toward each other. We'll come a millimeter closer to each other, and maybe we'll already achieve such a state where the Creator will start becoming revealed. It's very close. The state of this heartly nearness, closeness. This Congress is a big help in this direction. We can take a serious step forward. There are many people that are getting together, maybe from different cities. It's a big effort. How do you create the ideal conditions to draw the light? Because you can go and not draw the light. You have to go, and you have to go to places where you understand that you will integrate with the group, and you'll be together with them, and you'll have the ability to unite with them there, at heart, at soul. And if not, then wherever you are, get together, 2-3 people, enter someone's room, one of your rooms, and get together there for the entire day or for all the days of the Congress. I simply want to understand, how can a person examine whether he drew light upon himself? You have to feel that when you're coming closer together at heart, between you appears a feeling that really lifts you above your ordinary ego. Along with it, maybe you also get foreign thoughts, disturbances, but you have to understand that it works in parallel. One goes up, the other comes down, and this way, gradually, like with waves. You're moving like on waves, dancing, and you create these waves, these ups and downs. Coming closer, you're being drawn from above. Moving away, you're being pushed away from above. And due to this motion, you start producing a special spiritual energy that reveals the Creator. So antagonism isn't a symptom for the revelation of the light. You also feel closer to other people. In both of these expressions, I can write. And besides, I recommend you to read my Twitter. Read my tweets. New, old, doesn't matter. These tweets, they're written in a way that I put into each of them a certain feeling. I have to catch you somehow, grab you, turn you a bit on the inside. Keep doing it. Twitter and the lessons, especially the morning lessons we're going through every day. It's necessary. It's a must, really. Try. Try to be with us. So, still, what's the secret of the relations between a man and a woman if she studies Kabbalah and he doesn't? She has to do everything for him so that he will be content that she's studying the wisdom of Kabbalah. Meaning she has to show him that the wisdom of Kabbalah teaches her to love him more. The role of women is to bear children and educate them, and if so, what does a woman without children do? Dr. Lightman. This is not the role of women. The role of the female among animals, yes. The role of a woman is to help people come closer to each other. Women are capable of doing it, men aren't. A cannibal is an egoist, and a thief is an egoist, and a life-saving doctor is an egoist. What's the difference between a developed and undeveloped ego? A developed ego differs from a non-developed one that it has a greater ability to enjoy at the expense of others. The more developed, the more it can enjoy at the expense of others. And to be fulfilled, to develop at the expense of others. Kabbalists, they have no complaints, because a Kabbalist feels himself as a big egoist. True? A Kabbalist doesn't feel himself as an egoist. He understands that he has a big ego, but this ego was given to him to correct. He works with it. He doesn't allow the ego that's burning in him to control him. I don't allow the ego to control me. It awakens in me for me to control it. A question regarding the ego. I read on your ego that there is social ego, animate ego, and spiritual ego. It's an ego where I want to exploit others to my own benefit. So what's the difference between them? There are no dimensions per se. The difference is in the quality. So these three forms of ego exist in a person simultaneously? Of course, simultaneously on different levels. A good egoist is someone who's pushing full speed ahead on all levels. And the ego forces him to fill himself up in every way. And which of them do I have to correct? That's not your concern. You have to draw the upper light and it'll correct it. And what it corrects, that's its own concern. How do you know? What do you have to correct? You once said that there's no need to correct the animate ego. Rob, no, you don't have to think about it. By the way, the ego on the animate level is really something that you don't have to correct. But the most important thing is to draw the upper light. And through the connections between us and so on, you draw the upper light and it starts correcting certain egoistic qualities, and as a result, you begin to see your future actions. This Congress, will it help heal America? Heal the civil war there between the right and the left? Tell me. The world is suffering from all different possible problems, internal, external, Chinese, American, and what's going on in Germany and Italy, everywhere. They also suffer from what's going on in Syria, everywhere. The world's suffering everywhere. Therefore, we have to think about the correction. The Americans, they can't correct themselves. Neither can the Russians, nor the Europeans, nor Israel, nor anyone else. Simeon, so you're saying that if the Congress is in the United States, then no, this Congress won't necessarily influence the United States, but we have to push with the help of the entire world, and not only to push America. The Kli is mutual. You can't work only in some specific place. I think that we can do it, we will do it, especially on this Congress. The Congress will reveal a new attitude, correct attitude toward the world. So let's try and do it together. Expect to see at the Congress. Expect to see also on the screens. And after the Congress, next Sunday, in 2 weeks, we'll meet again.
Мы вернемся, да.
Мы вернемся.
Да, после Конгресса будет урок.
Да, и когда мы улетаем?
Ну, это еще неделя.
Еще неделя, у нас будет еще время. Мы еще встретимся с вами. То есть через 2 недели.
So, we're meeting in 2 weeks. Sunday in 2 weeks from today. All the best and good luck. See you at the Congress this weekend.